Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. I am your host, Dr. Nikki Starr, and today, on episode 33, we will be talking about what is and is not a toxic relationship. And if you're watching the video version, I put toxic in quotation marks because I am always very careful how I label things, how I label people, because words are powerful, words are spells, and whenever we are speaking of someone, we have the opportunity to uplift them or bring them down. You know, it's a form of white magic or a form of black magic. And so I'm very mindful. I really do my best not to name call a relationship, not to name call a person, but rather we want to speak about behaviors, which are transient. But when we label something, it's like we are projecting an energy onto it that will either help it grow or be anti-life. And I am here as a bringer of light, as a bringer of love. And I find that when I'm coaching couples and even in my own relationship with family, relationship with beloved, relationship in all the ways, it's so important how we speak about others and how we speak about the relationship. And right now, it is like all the craze where people are talking about narcissists and people are talking about toxic relationships and all these different things. And I want to really bring in the energy of unconditional love and compassion. I want to bring in the frequency of the divine feminine, the divine masculine. I want to bring in, and I'm calling upon the highest frequencies of divine love and light. I'm calling upon divine union. I'm calling upon the guardians of the twin flames, the guardians of divine union. I'm calling upon Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. I'm calling upon Isis and Osiris, Lady Portia and Saint Germain. And I'm calling upon divine support for this specific episode, even though everything I do is infused with the highest frequencies of divine love and light. But I especially feel called today to call in these frequencies because of the aspects that we're going to be talking about. And specifically, even bringing up the word toxic, we're referencing the shadow aspect of our human nature. And I want to preface this episode also by saying that I am here as part of my mission for the healing of the man-woman relationship. And what that brings with it are the centuries and eons of the battle between the masculine and the feminine, of the many distortions and traumas and wounds that are lived between both elements, between the masculine and the feminine, between man and woman. And we're here to heal that as part of the awakening of human consciousness, as part of the healing of the planet and us as a human race and our evolution into the new earth. So much of aspects around love are required, and we are stepping into this even more. And it requires our compassion. It requires our deepest love, our deepest holding space as best as possible from the compassionate observer, remembering that everyone is doing their best, remembering that everyone has wounds and challenges, and most importantly, that relationships, especially romantic, intimate relationships, are the forefront, and we can say the battleground
for the place that the healing between the man-woman relationship happens. Love, as you've heard me say before, is that healing salve that allows for us to go to the wounded places. And our wounds in love stem back from past lives, stem back from generational things that we've inherited, stem back from the karma that we have brought into us with this life, or just our generational karma from where we come from and our ancestors, and also from our childhood. The example that was given to us by our parents, specifically around conception time, during birth and within the first year of birth, and even up through age 7, as that's when we are really forming our energy body and we are imprinted on the most. We are the most sponge-like for the first 7 years. And that in the first 7 years is when our energy bodies are growing. And what feeds our energy bodies are the sexual energies of our parents. And so depending on what was shown to us to mean love in that time, absolutely imprints and affects how we experience love in our lives. And the very thing, as one of my mentors says, the very thing that closed the heart is the very thing that is feared and expected to then present itself again once the heart is open. And so we can find that as we are on our journey of love to divine union, that you may find that you have similar but different experiences within romantic relationship, like same script, different cast. And the intelligence of relationship, and what I have seen and observed over time, and many relationship coaches I feel would agree with me, is that we attract the very person who is the match to help us heal our wound, which means that we will be likely to experience it in the relationship, and the level to and at which we have done the healing work on our own, that they have done their healing work on their own, that we're able to meet. And how these wounds are navigated all depends on the level of personal development and self-awareness and awareness of other that each individual has. And so we are all at different points along our personal development journey, along our spiritual journey. And so the more personal development work we do as an individual, the more prepared we are to go into relationship. And that being said, nothing can prepare us for relationship, because you can think you are the most enlightened person until you enter into relationship. And then a whole host of other triggers and wounds will come up for you to heal that you have yet looked at. And it's really so fascinating, because I myself am one of these people who I remember for mostly over a decade, I was more or less single, maybe 3 months max was a relationship. And every time I had a long stretch of being single, I was like, wow, I'm so curious if I will feel territorial, if I will feel triggered in this way or in that way, because I've done so much work now. But I have found that the only way to heal some things that we've inherited, some things that are our karma, is not to heal from a relationship, but to heal through it. That the only way for that stuff to even come up is to actually go into relationship. And now we get into what this whole episode is about toxicity. So oftentimes we can think there's toxicity in a relationship when there is a shadow and a trigger that comes up and it's dealt with in a way that is not conscious. So there can be boundaries crossed. There can be elements of emotional, mental, physical abuse. And not that I'm condoning any of this, I am not, but I'm just giving a definition of what would constitute a toxic relationship. That there are forms of abuse that can happen, forms of disrespect, speaking to each other in a way that is anything other than loving and compassionate. And then this pattern is repeated over and over and over without any kind of change. And both people are traumatized and hurt and can even contort and contract, and their lights are dimmed and they start to become less of themselves and they start to hurt each other. and others in their lives because of this quote unquote toxic behavior. And the thing I want to say is that many relationships experience this even if it is not a toxic relationship. So, what defines toxic versus not toxic is when both people are willing to look at themselves and how they show up in relationship and do the personal development work and the healing work in order to change and transform and evolve into greater love, into greater compassion, into greater connection, and build greater self-awareness and show up with more responsivity. It's not even a word, I don't think. Show up in a way that you're more responsive versus reactive. So instead of like unconscious ways of behaving that are just in the moment, involuntary, you don't have any control over it, versus that pause, even if the anger and the rage and the emotions and the hurt come up, that you're able to take a breath, take a moment, and then respond differently. So if you are in a relationship that you have felt maybe this is toxic, maybe it is not, you're not quite sure, the thing that is most defining is that there is evolution and changes over time, and the relationship is getting better and better, and that you are showing up better and better, and that your partner is showing up better and better. Because the level of your traumas and the levels of the karma that you have inherited can determine the level to which you can react in a way that is quote unquote toxic. And then the same for your partner. And now we are all healing wounds and traumas. And because the romantic relationship is that battleground for that trigger to come up, you're going to experience high level of emotions in relationship as you are healing through some of your core wounds and traumas. And different relationships are meant to be the place where you heal that. And that's why there are relationships for a lesson, a season, or a lifetime. And you may have a relationship that you've been in that you feel or felt was quote unquote toxic. It didn't evolve. It brought up all of your stuff to be healed, but that was the gift of it. And I'm going to be sharing an episode that is called The Gift of the Breakup. And we'll go more into that in that episode. But I really want to, in this episode, really be supportive for people who have been in toxic relationships, or what you think is toxic relationship, or if you're currently in a relationship and you're not sure if it is supportive or toxic. And basically, the thing that you can ask yourself is anything improving? Has anything gotten better? Or is the relationship being the definition of crazy, where you're both doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, but there's none? And as you can start to navigate your triggers in a way that is more spacious, more present, you're able to talk about things that you weren't able to talk about before, that were just ended up in fights and hurt and crying, which it's absolutely normal to cry in relationship. It's absolutely normal to express emotion. It's just the way that it happens. And I've always said this in my own relationships, as well as in working with couples, that emotions are okay. It's what is done with those emotions that's the problem. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel rage. It's okay to cry and feel hurt. All of that is okay. What's not okay is how that energy is directed, and if there is any form of abuse towards yourself or someone else. And when that happens, that is something that really must be healed and looked at. And the first step is to take full responsibility of how you showed up in that way. And then to put into plan and action, like when that happens again, meaning I'm feeling anger or rage, this is what I'm going to do. Some people need space. They need to go for a walk. They need to sleep in a different room. They need to take a moment, take a breath, take a day or two, instead of engaging in the energies where you're adding fire to fire and then you have a big explosion. And so all of these things are emotional intelligence work, anger management work, And depending on the level of trauma, each person will have a different fuse. So how much you can handle before you're offset to that point. And I really don't like to think that, I really like to see the humanity in everyone. Even if people have been on their spiritual path for a really long time, you may need to still dive deeper into personal development work when it comes to relationship, because that's the only person who can trigger some of this stuff inside of you. And even when it's funny, because even when working with a lot of like Latin American women, especially Colombian women, like I'm a Colombian lineage woman, and there's a lot of jealousy, anger, rage, even violence in relationships of that lineage. And it can happen through family lines too. Like if you were seeing abuse in your home as a child, you may co-create that pattern in your life to heal that part of yourself, of your little girl. And sometimes it's in the relationship that it happens because it's the only place that it can come up. And you might find that you can even trigger and create, it's almost like a sabotage pattern. And that's often what's seen. And this is why sometimes history can repeat itself and we see certain karmic patterns perpetuating in generational lines. And now, us as the conscious beings that we are here to heal. We're here to heal for ourselves, but we're here to heal for the future generations because we are co-creating the new earth. It is a choice. It's a choice. And it doesn't mean that you can't heal with your current partner. Absolutely, you can. If you feel there are toxic elements in your relationship, you can absolutely heal within your relationship if you're both willing. And as I've talked about in past episodes, willingness is one of the primary, most important aspects of a relationship. In order for it to go the distance, you can get through anything. You can get through the darkest times. You can get through the most challenging times if you both are willing to step up and do the work together. And so my recommendation, if you're finding you're in a toxic dynamic or toxic traits, because I truly believe in the good in all humans. I truly believe in the good in all relationships. And if there's really love and you both desire the same kind of love and you're both committed to your healing and your personal development work, then absolutely. Because I've gotten this question before, even on my Instagram when I've asked questions, and people have often shared how they are experiencing a partner that is avoidant or who's not showing up or may have abusive tendencies, but this person also does not really show that they want to be in relationship. So if you find yourself chasing someone that you feel is not respectful towards you, the most important thing is to let that person go, because it doesn't sound like there is a reciprocity in that relationship. It doesn't sound like it's a two-way street. It sounds like you may be chasing and going after something. And that's another dynamic within yourself that may be asking for healing. And the first step is always self-love. And there's many ways to go about that, but ultimately it's about choosing environments that are going to be supportive and uplifting and respectful. And of course, most importantly, when you choose to love yourself and show up for yourself, you're going to attract in a match who loves you and shows up for you and is willing to do whatever it takes. And willing to do whatever it takes could mean couples coaching, could mean couples therapy, could mean going and doing your own healing work, whether it's breath work or plant medicines or energy work or the million modalities. Anything that makes you more self-aware, even if it's just starting a meditation practice, that absolutely helps anger management. And so as you're both building your muscle of self-awareness, how you show up in relationship, automatically there's going to be that spaciousness anytime there might be a trigger. And triggers are the thing that are going to catalyze any kind of moment where there could be toxicity that shows up. But again, as long as you're both committed to the healing work, as long as the fights or the disagreements that happen are evolving where you're able to speak more and you're able to find solutions. And when the trigger arises the next time, there's a change in how it's handled by both you and your partner. This is the gold. And the thing is that depending on the level of trauma, if you grew up in a home that there was abuse, or your parents lived a toxic dynamic of whatever sort, where it wasn't just love and compassion, and it wasn't a nice, easy, emotional space, but it was a roller coaster of emotions, you may find that you recreate that because those aspects want to be healed. And there are, as I mentioned, so many ways to heal from toxic dynamics, but ultimately, you healing anything within yourself first is the first step. Because as you heal and change your frequency and vibration, you end up shifting the match and the partner that shows up in your life. And this is why you eventually feel the desire to not want to be in a relationship anymore, because you've evolved through it. You've done the healing work. And if that person doesn't match and doesn't meet you at that next level where you are evolving into, then you're not going to feel a resonance anymore. Because I truly believe, like I mentioned, that attraction, that chemistry is really your traumas talking. That attraction and chemistry is really where that person has medicine for you to heal the parts of yourself, to return to your wholeness and to the love that you are. And because you trigger each other, that also shows a match. Triggerability is compatibility. And these are the places where you need to heal. And that's the point of relationships. Relationships are mirrors. So if there's any form of toxicity that you feel, is look within first. Instead of pointing fingers and blaming, look within first. See where you can show up and do the healing work. And then you will see how the dynamic shifts. And what has happened for myself, for my clients, is as I heal and I show up differently, and I have different perceptions around situations that happen. And as I am able to be aware of my triggers, and as I am able to take responsibility, the dynamic automatically shifts. The other person doesn't even have to. But of course, if you're in a healing path, then I absolutely recommend that you choose someone who's willing to do their healing work. And then with that, you see how the relationship continues to evolve. And this is how you evolve together. And even if you ask some of the most incredible couples that you know, I'm sure there are challenges that they have been through. And there may have been ugly moments that either one of them might not be proud of. But it's how those were handled and changed so that the next time things happen differently. And as you heal things in a relationship dynamic, they don't even show up anymore. We're actually manifesting situations so that we can show up differently, so that we can choose a new reality. But it always begins with us. And we only attract someone at the level to which, one, we can handle being in that relationship, but two, so that they have medicine for us and we have medicine for them. And the thing that determines a lesson, a season, a lifetime is the willingness, and also the speed and the rate at which you both evolve, and that you both choose to evolve. And so if you're on the evolution, you're on the fast train together, or the slow train, or the medium train together, then you're going to grow together. And I know for me, a lot of times personally, why I didn't have relationships that lasted more than 3 months before my current relationship is because I was growing at an exponential rate. And I felt like I had learned whatever lessons, and then it was like time to move on. Like I no longer felt attracted. I no longer felt like I wanted to be in a relationship. Whereas my relationship now, I have never met someone so willing. I have never met someone who is able to put in the work, see the self-awareness, shift the patterns, show up differently. And wherever there was a blow up, I could see where I contributed to it. It was always a co-creation. Whether the things I said, the things I didn't say, the timing of things, so really the more our self-awareness grows, this is where we can really make conscious effort in how we're contributing and showing up to a relationship. So I want to And I feel like in the bonus, what we're going to do is really do a healing for the man-woman relationship. For any toxic vibrations within yourself, we're going to look at those so that we can heal them and support you into coming into greater union, greater compassion, unconditional love, and greater harmony. Because I feel like the opposite of toxicity is harmony. The opposite of toxicity is that love and compassion. And as you can show up more and more and more in that frequency, your relationship will automatically be that frequency. And whatever is not will fall away. And that's the thing. Everything is a frequency match. So the truth is, if you're not sure if your relationship is toxic or not, instead of focusing on your relationship, focus on yourself. Do your healing work, do your part. And in moments of trigger and challenge, really observe how you're showing up and what you choose to do and how you choose to respond instead of react, and choosing not to go into the chaos and the tornado of whatever emotions are happening, but allow them to be energy in motion. And there are many ways to handle it, from being able to talk consciously about things, but then there's also polarity work. So there's like so many ways to heal. And I'm not saying at all that relationships are only love and light, because they're not. And if your relationship is really a match for your greatest evolution, it's absolutely going to dig up all your crap that needs to be healed. And your perception of it and how you choose to talk about it is going to make all the difference. So you can choose toxic, or you can choose that you are in a relationship for your greatest evolution and becoming. And if at any time you feel it crosses boundaries that are not respectful towards you, then you have that choice to walk away without needing to blame anyone or point names or say how people are, but just from a place of sovereignty, from a space of self-respect and self-love. You can choose to end a relationship at any time. But if you find yourself being pulled back in and attracted to that energy, it's because there's still something within yourself that needs and wants healing. And the sooner you address that, the sooner the relationship dynamic shifts, and the sooner you step into that divine union bliss that you know is for you. And I want you to know that because we are, until we're fully in the new earth, and some of us are already here, but for those of you that are not yet, we're in a world of duality and polarity. So there's going to be days where you have the best day with your partner and days where you have the worst, and days where you have both together. And if you see energy and motion as emotions, so your emotions are constantly transient, and even depending on the day or what happened that day, your response can be completely different every time. And so I really invite you to start to take greater self responsibility for things. Really start to look at your frequency and vibration. And whenever if you're dating and you meet someone, you go on a date and you observe a frequency that you're like, I recognize this, but I no longer want to be a part of that. Then you have the choice in that moment to say, I am complete. I recognize this, I'm feeling an attraction, but I don't want to play out that same story. So every moment there's a conscious choice, and you decide. You're the creator of your reality and destiny and your relationship. So it's ultimately up to you. But my biggest advice is to lose the labeling, drop the toxic labels, drop the narcissist labels, drop the victim labels, and really rise up in that unconditional, fierce love for yourself, fierce love for all that is, and focus on you and do your part to return to the love that you are and the harmony and the bliss and the divine union that you are. And then all of your relationships, especially your beloved relationship, will be that. And then if challenges and traumas and triggers come up in the relationship, you can meet them while still honoring the emotions that want to pass through. You can meet them with the highest presence and the highest love. And so with that, I send you so much love. I will see you inside the bonus content as we do healing work to heal any toxicities or patterns that are not serving your divine union, that are not serving your greatest becoming. Thank you so much for doing this great work. Thank you for all the benevolent, loving energies that were present for this very important episode for the healing of the man-woman relationship. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here, and share this with anyone you feel who would benefit. Big kiss to you. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.